What up, everyone? Welcome back to Blade Bias. Plastic is in a very interesting place right now. Plastic balisongs, I should say, where they used to be the kings of the budget range and now are being overtaken by things like the Glider Bermuda, Nibali's Lightning, Nibali's Vulp, Amazon Trainers, etc. But plastic is not going anywhere, and it is my belief that plastic will always have its place in the community, as long as plastic makers continue down the road that they are going right now, where they are making their balisongs unique. Now, this was originally supposed to be a video about why I like the Tay Flipper so much, but I realized that that's going to kind of fall under this, which I will explain next video, I promise. So I figured, why not talk about plastic in general? Because I've seen some interesting takes where people believe that plastic is no longer worth it because we have options like the stuff from Nibali's, like the Glider Bermuda, and things like that. And that could not be farther from the truth, because while plastic balisongs may no longer be the best intro to the hobby, they are certainly still something that will have its place and that will sell. And the thing that keeps their place is their uniqueness. Nowhere else except the NRB Ultralight, but that is so scarce as to be virtually non-applicable in this specific example, because they're all light and they all provide an experience that you cannot get with metal. And that is where plastic balisong makers shine. As long as they're not trying to emulate metal, which I'm not specifically calling out FlipForge when I say that, because there is something unique about that product. As long as they're not trying to compete with metal balisongs and they keep the uniqueness of what they are, which is plastic, they will always have a place in someone's collection. Because at the end of the day, let's say that someone like me has 4 balisongs. Actually, no. Let's say I have 2 balisongs. I have my Nemesis and I have my Arctic. If you, as a plastic maker, want to get into my collection, you should not try to replace these 2, because plastic will never replace these 2. What you need to do is you need to make an experience so unique that it makes me not replace one of mine, but add a slot to my collection. And that's exactly what plastic makers are doing right now. Now, I'm flipping the diode. I don't think the diode is the best example of this. This is literally just get a balisong out there for as cheap as possible for literally anyone to buy. But the Tay Flipper is a perfect example of this, as is something like the Zipper or the Cycloid, the Calico, the FlipForge Edit, once I'm able to try one, etc. Because at the end of the day, except for a few rare examples, like I would say that the Tay Flipper would replace a metal balisong in my collection at some point, you want to make an experience that makes people go, I'll get another one, rather than, I'll replace this. Because I don't think that you can replace this with this. And that's why the Tay Flipper is so interesting to me. The Tay Flipper is big, chunky, has whacked out, holy cow, has whacked out proportions. I mean, just look at the thing. It's so much bigger, twice as thick, not twice as thick, but I'm exaggerating, but you know. And it's just a completely unique experience. It's also a public flipper. Plastic will always have the advantage of getting through TSA easier. Getting through TSA at all. Being non-threatening, especially with things like white blades from Tay Flipper, which, from personal anecdote from Tay himself, helps a lot in making your balisong look less threatening. But plastic is always going to provide this secondary experience that is different from metal, yes, but different does not always equal bad. And I think that's something that we always forget about, because a lot of these balisongs are worth buying and adding that slot in your collection for. The Tay Flipper, the Zipper, the Calico, things like that. Now the Bermuda, a lot of people are going to point to the Bermuda and go, well, why does that, why can't that replace whatever? I don't know. Because it's cheap and it's supposed to be that way. This is supposed to be an entry level the same way that this is. This is not going to replace this. This is not going to replace this, because it is a cheaper experience that doesn't feel as premium as something like the Arctic does. So the Arctic will always have its place, but so will the Bermuda, because the Bermuda is cheap and allows people to get a cheap beater or a cheap intro to the hobby. Plastic, on the other hand, I think has evolved to a point where now that people kind of understand the value of plastic, 3D printed balisong makers always had the issue of people thinking that their balisongs weren't worth the money that they were charging because, oh, it's just plastic, you can make that for 5 cents, yada, yada, yada. I think we have largely dispelled that for the most part. I mean, obviously, in all corners of every hobby, there's going to be every opinion under the sun. But by and large, I think we've accepted plastic into our balisong lives, so to speak. So now, do they stay there? Absolutely. The same way that bearings don't replace bushings, they're just a different experience to them. And I think that's where the future of plastic lies. It's actually a really good analogy that I didn't think about until just now. When you get bearings on a cheap balisong, because you can get bearings on cheaper balisongs easier, you can point to that and say, oh, it's going to kill the bushings, or it's not going to be as good as bushings. Well, yeah, that may be true, because these are two subjective experiences. Some people like bushings, some people like bearings. That's just how it goes. They don't replace each other. Hell, sometimes they don't even compete with each other. And that's, I think, exactly where plastic is going to find its strive, where it's not competing with metal. It's a subjective experience. Man, doing doubles and trying to talk is impossible. It's a subjective experience that people are going to prefer, or people are not going to prefer, based on their wants, and specifically their collections. I think it would be safe to say that most balisong flippers own or have owned some sort of plastic balisong at one point, whether it be the Squiddy, Tay Flipper, any of the other ones. I think it's safe to say that that spot in people's collections has already opened up. And with the more ingenuity that we're seeing come out of the plastic scene, with things like the Edit, things like the Calico, a wildly, wildly unique flipping experience. I, for one, certainly don't see plastic balisongs going anywhere. And plastic makers are even adapting ahead of this. You see Zippy with all of his mods that he's making for balisongs. I think they're just always going to have a place. Those guys are too creative to be beaten by Chinese metal balisongs. Straight up. So yeah, kind of an opinion-y based piece, a couple of opinion-y based pieces this week, but I don't really have much else to cover, to be honest. News has been slow. No new balisongs yet. And I think that's about it. Next time, I'll finally explain this. So, I'll see you then. Peace.